Hello guys, on Voice of Betrayal, where every lie has a voice. If someone had told me back then that one day I'd be sitting alone in an empty apartment, wondering if the woman I loved more than anything had been carrying another man's child, I would have laughed in their face. Not Anna. Not my Anna. She wasn't the type. I met her when I was 17, back when my biggest worry was whether my old pickup would start in the winter. She was 16, shy in the kind of way that made you lean in just to hear her voice. Our families already knew each other, our moms worked at the same hospital for years, our dads played on the same softball team. In a small town, that means you grow up orbiting around the same faces. But for some reason, I never really noticed her until the summer before my senior year. It was at one of those neighborhood barbecues where the air smelled like grilled corn and charcoal, and kids ran barefoot on the grass until their feet turned black. I remember standing there, a paper plate in one hand, a Coke in the other, when she walked in wearing this faded blue sundress. The sun hit her hair just right, light brown with threads of gold, and she smiled at someone across the yard. That smile, it didn't feel like a smile at me, but somehow it still hit me straight in the chest. I don't remember what I said to her that first time. Probably something awkward about the weather or the potato salad. But I remember she laughed, and I remember wanting to hear that sound again. Back then, we didn't rush into anything. We'd see each other at church picnics, at football games, sometimes at the diner after school. By October, I was looking for excuses to drive past her house, hoping she'd be outside. By December, we were officially dating, though in small-town terms, that meant sitting in my truck for hours just talking about everything and nothing. She'd tell me about her dreams of becoming a teacher, about her favorite books, about how she thought winter was the most beautiful season because it forced people to slow down. I told her I was going to join my uncle's construction business after graduation, save up, and maybe buy us a little place one day. We were just kids, but even then, I think part of me knew, this is it. This is who I want to come home to. High school sweethearts. That's what everyone called us, and I wore that title like a badge of honor. While other couples broke up and got back together every few months, we just stayed. Solid. Predictable in the best way. She was my date to prom, my biggest cheerleader when I got my first full-time job, the person I wanted to tell everything to, no matter how small. After I turned 22, I proposed to her in the park where we used to walk after church. It wasn't anything fancy, just me, a ring, and shaking hands, but when she said yes, it felt like my whole life had clicked into place. We married the next spring, under a white tent behind her parents' house. Our families laughed, cried, danced. I remember thinking that day, we're going to make it. No matter what life throws at us. And for a long time, we did. We built a home together. We had 2 boys, loud, messy, full of questions about the world. She was everything I imagined she'd be as a mom. Gentle but firm, always patient, always the one who could calm them down when they were about to launch into some full-blown meltdown over not getting the blue cup instead of the red one. I used to stand in the doorway and watch her read to them at night, her voice soft and steady, and I'd think, this is it. This is the life I wanted. If there were cracks back then, I didn't see them. Or maybe I just didn't want to. If you'd asked me then, I would have told you our life was exactly how I wanted it. We had a small but cozy house on the edge of town, white siding, a porch swing, a backyard big enough for the boys to tear around in until they wore themselves out. I'd leave for work before sunrise, come home with sore muscles and a clear conscience, and there'd be dinner on the table, homework scattered across the kitchen counter, cartoons playing too loud in the living room. We had our little routines. Friday night pizza. Saturday morning pancakes, always with chocolate chips because the boys wouldn't have it any other way. And after the kids were in bed, Anna and I would sit out on the porch, wrapped in blankets, just talking. Sometimes about the week, sometimes about nothing at all. She'd tuck her knees up under herself, sip her tea, and smile at me in that way that said, "You're my safe place." I never thought about how rare that was. How lucky I was. But looking back now, I can see it. The little changes. They were so small at first that I didn't even register them. Like the way she'd stay in the shower a little longer than usual. Or how she started checking her phone more often, not obsessively, just enough that I noticed. She'd smile at something on the screen, then set it face down. When I asked, she'd say it was just a friend from work sending her something funny. And I believed her, because why wouldn't I? Sometimes she'd be distracted. We'd be watching a movie and I'd glance over, see her staring off into the middle distance like she was somewhere else entirely. I'd ask if she was tired, and she'd shake it off, give me a quick smile, and rest her head on my shoulder. And I'd let it go, because she still laughed at my jokes, still kissed me goodbye every morning, still called me babe like she always had. We had friends who went through rough patches, couples who fought, who stopped sleeping in the same bed, who talked about needing space. I'd hear their stories and think, that could never be us. We were different. We had history, trust, love. Then came the promotion. It wasn't huge, just a shift into a slightly higher role at the community center where she worked, but it meant she'd be home later a few nights a week. I was proud of her. She'd worked hard for it. I even joked that she was the breadwinner now. She laughed, told me not to forget who did the laundry. Those nights she worked late, I'd handle dinner and bedtime. The boys would beg to wait up for her, but most of the time they'd be asleep by the time she walked in, hair a little messy, cheeks flushed like she'd been in a hurry. Sometimes she'd have takeout boxes from the staff lounge. Sometimes just a smell of perfume that wasn't hers. It wasn't a bad smell. It just wasn't hers. I told myself not to overthink it. This was Anna. My Anna. But even now, I can't stop wondering, was that when it started? Or had it started long before, and I just didn't see it? It's strange how you can live in the same house with someone and not realize you're losing them until the distance is too wide to cross. At first, it was just small, harmless excuses. Oh, I promised I'd help out with an extra class tonight. Some of the staff are going for drinks after work, I'll be home late. Nothing unusual. She was sociable, always liked making friends wherever she went. But soon, those late nights became normal. The boys noticed before I did. One night, our youngest asked, "Is Mommy mad at us?" "She's always gone now." I laughed it off, told him she was just busy, but inside I felt something twist. When she was home, she was still Anna. Still affectionate, still a great mom. But sometimes she seemed almost guilty for it. Like she was trying too hard to prove everything was fine. And then there was her phone. She never used to be secretive. We'd scroll through each other's pictures without a thought. But now, she'd angle the screen away if I walked past. Sometimes I'd hear the soft whoosh of a sent message, then see her lock the phone and slip it into her pocket like she'd been caught with something. One Friday, I came home early. She didn't hear me walk in, she was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but there was laughter in it. A kind of laugh I hadn't heard in a while. I stepped into the doorway. "Hey." She jumped like she'd been burned, ending the call so fast it was almost comical. "Oh, hey, babe. You're home early." "Who was that?" I asked. She smiled, too quickly. "Just a coworker." "You don't know him." "Him." She'd never mentioned him before. I wanted to ask more. To press. But she moved past me, kissed my cheek, and started talking about what we should have for dinner like the conversation had never happened. That night, after she fell asleep, I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering when I'd started feeling like a stranger in my own marriage, and I told myself I was overreacting. Because if I admitted I wasn't, then I'd have to face the possibility that my whole world wasn't as solid as I thought. It was a Sunday morning when the ground finally gave way. The boys were still in their pajamas, fighting over the last toaster waffle, and I was nursing my first cup of coffee when my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was off. Too careful, too measured. "Hey, honey. How are you holding up?" Fine," I said, glancing at the mess in the kitchen. "Why?" There was a pause, long enough that I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Then she said, "I thought you should hear it from me. Anna's pregnant." The words didn't make sense at first. Pregnant? We hadn't, well, not as much lately. Not with how distant things had been. And even if we had. I set the mug down before I dropped it. "What?" "She told your sister yesterday." Said she wanted to tell you herself but, you've had her blocked. My mom's voice wavered. I'm sorry, sweetheart. My chest felt like it was caving in. I didn't ask who the father was, not yet. But the question was already there, gnawing at me. When I finally spoke, my voice didn't sound like mine. Did she say anything else? Only that she's sure it's yours, Mom said, too quickly. And that she's sorry. That was the moment the suspicion I'd been swallowing for weeks turned into something solid. Something ugly. Because there was no way she could be sure. By noon, I was pacing the living room like a caged animal. My hands kept balling into fists without me realizing. I didn't call her. I didn't want to hear her voice yet. I didn't trust myself not to say something I couldn't take back. Instead, I started remembering things I'd been trying to forget, the secretive phone calls, the late nights, the too bright smiles when I asked questions she didn't want to answer. And then another thought hit me like a punch to the ribs. What if the baby wasn't mine? That night, I sent a short, blunt message. No greetings. No small talk. I want a paternity test. She agreed without hesitation. Swore she'd get rid of the baby if it wasn't mine. Swore she'd only been with him once. Swore it meant nothing. But by then, I didn't believe her. Because the truth wasn't just about the baby. It was about everything that came before it, and the way I could suddenly see our whole life together through a crack I couldn't unsee. 2 days. That's how long I lasted before I couldn't take it anymore. 2 days of replaying my mother's voice, 2 days of imagining Anna with someone else, 2 days of wondering if the child growing inside her was mine, or his. I told myself I was going to keep it calm. Just get answers. No yelling. No breaking things. But the second I saw her, all that went out the window. She opened the door slowly, like she already knew I was a storm waiting to break. Her eyes were red, her cheeks blotchy. She'd been crying, maybe for hours. Maybe for days. Hey, she said softly. Don't, I snapped, brushing past her into the living room. Don't hate me. She shut the door, turning to face me. I was going to call. You should have called. My voice was sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. You should have told me before my mother had to. Her hands twisted together, the way they always did when she was nervous. I didn't know how. Try, I cut in. Tell me how you ended up pregnant while you were sneaking around with another man. Her face crumpled. It wasn't like that. I laughed, bitter, humorless. You're pregnant. By me. Or him. And you want to tell me it wasn't like that. She stepped closer, but I took a step back. I didn't want her near me, didn't want her to soften me with those eyes that used to mean everything. I swear it's yours, she said. I swear, it was one time with him. She stopped herself, swallowed hard. I don't even know why I did it. I was stupid. I wasn't thinking. One time. I shot back. You expect me to believe that? She nodded quickly, tears spilling down her face. I was just, talking to him. I don't even like him. I never wanted him. I love you, I always have. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her why loving me hadn't been enough. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said, we're doing the test. And no matter what it says, I'm filing for divorce. Her sob turned into a sharp gasp, like I'd stabbed her. Please, don't say that in front of the boys. Then keep them out of it, I said. But you don't get to cry your way out of this. She reached for me again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to fix this. I looked at her hand hovering in the air between us, the same hand that had held mine at the altar, the same hand that had rocked our babies to sleep, and for the first time in years, I didn't take it. Start by telling me the truth, I said. All of it. No lies. Not one. She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw something that made my stomach twist, fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of what I'd hear. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same place where we'd once planned vacations, birthdays, Christmas mornings. Now the only sound was the hum of the fridge and her uneven breathing. You want the truth, she said finally. Yes, I said. All of it. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, where the boys were playing in their room. She lowered her voice. It wasn't an affair. Not the way you think. I felt my jaw tighten. You've already admitted you slept with him. She winced. Once. Once is enough. She shook her head, like she wanted to push back but didn't have the strength. I was lonely. You were working so much. And he listened. I almost laughed. Listened. That's your excuse. Tears spilled over again, and she reached for a napkin, twisting it until it tore in her hands. I'm not saying it was okay. It wasn't. I can't explain it right. You'll think I'm making excuses. Try me, I said. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, looking away. It wasn't supposed to happen. We were talking, and then, he kissed me. I should have stopped him. I didn't. I don't even know why. It just happened. I stared at her. Things don't just happen, Anna. You chose it. She flinched, and for a moment I thought she'd argue. But instead, she whispered, I hate myself for it. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But there was something in the way she said it, too quick, too neat, like a line rehearsed in her head. Is there anything else? I asked. She hesitated. And in that hesitation, I saw the truth, she was holding something back. What aren't you telling me? Her fingers dug into the napkin until little bits of it stuck to her skin. It's not something I can just say. Then write it down, I snapped. She looked at me for a long moment, her lips trembling. Not without your sister here. That threw me. My sister? What does she have to do with this? She's part of it, Anna said quietly. I felt the blood rush to my ears. Part of what? Anna didn't answer. She just stared at the table, like if she didn't meet my eyes, she wouldn't have to say it out loud. And in that silence, I realized, whatever this was, it was bigger than I'd thought. Anna's text came the next morning. If you're still willing to hear me out, come by tonight. Bring your sister. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to ignore it, to walk away and let her sit in whatever mess she'd made. But the way she'd said part of it yesterday, it was like she'd handed me a puzzle piece and dared me to figure out the rest. By evening, I was pulling into her driveway, my sister in the passenger seat. She didn't ask why we were doing this. She just looked straight ahead, jaw tight, like she already knew more than she'd told me. Inside, Anna was waiting at the kitchen table. She didn't look like she'd slept, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy knot. No makeup. Just her. Thanks for coming, she said, voice low. I stayed standing. Start talking. She glanced at my sister, then back at me. I asked her to be here because she knows some of it. And I didn't want to say it without her. My sister finally looked up. This isn't easy, okay? Nothing about this is easy, I said. So quit dancing around it. Anna took a shaky breath. The one you think I cheated with, it wasn't like that. I didn't want it to happen. Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt my stomach turn. What are you saying? She twisted her hands together. We were alone after work. We'd been talking, I thought it was harmless. But then he didn't stop when I said no. The room went dead quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the chair under my sister as she shifted. I swallowed hard. You're telling me it was? Anna cut me off, shaking her head. I'm not saying that. I didn't fight him off. I didn't scream. I just froze. And part of me feels like I let it happen. Like I led him on. My sister spoke up, her voice firm. That's not on you, Anna. I told her that. I told her 100 times. I stared at both of them, my thoughts spinning. So you're saying you were assaulted, but you don't think you were? Anna's eyes brimmed with tears. I don't know what to think. I hate him. I hate myself. And I hate that I can't even explain it to you without sounding like I'm making excuses. I sat down slowly, my knees suddenly unsteady. The anger I'd been carrying all week twisted into something else, confusion, disbelief, a sick, gnawing sense that this was even more complicated than I'd imagined. And beneath it all, one question still pulsed in my head like a heartbeat. What if the baby's mine? I drove home that night in silence. My sister sat beside me, arms crossed, staring out the window. I could tell she wanted to say something, maybe to defend Anna, maybe to tell me I'd been too hard on her. But she didn't. And I didn't ask. My head was too full, my chest too tight. Her words kept looping in my mind. I didn't stop him. I froze. I didn't know whether to believe her, or if believing her would even change anything. Because even if it wasn't what I thought, even if she didn't plan it, didn't want it, the fact remained, another man had touched her, and now there was a baby that might be his. That night, I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The boys were asleep down the hall, the only sound their soft breathing. And I kept thinking about how I was supposed to look them in the eyes if the test came back and proved what I was afraid of. 3 more days until the results. Every hour felt like a week. I'd catch myself glancing at my phone, half hoping, half dreading a call from the clinic. My stomach churned whenever I thought about opening that envelope. Anna texted twice, both times short. "I'm sorry. I hope you're okay." I didn't answer. The truth was, I wasn't okay. I didn't know if I'd ever be okay again. Part of me wanted to go back to the way things were, the porch talks, the pancakes, the boys' laughter in the backyard. To pretend none of this had ever happened. But even if I could, would I be able to look at her without remembering? Without wondering? 3 more days. 3 more days until I knew for sure whether I was the father of that child. And deep down, a thought I hated kept circling back. What if it's mine, and I still can't love it? The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was at work, halfway through loading a pallet, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew. I just knew. "Mr. Carter," a woman's voice said when I answered. "The paternity results you requested are ready for pickup." My mouth went dry. "Pickup?" "Yes, sir. In person only." I hung up without another word, told my foreman I had to go, and drove straight across town. The whole way there, I felt like I was breathing through a straw. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. When I got to the clinic, the receptionist handed me a thick, sealed envelope. It felt heavier than it should have, like the paper inside knew it was holding my life in its folds. I sat in my truck for a long time, staring at it. I could have torn it open right there. Could have ended the waiting in seconds. But my hands wouldn't move. Because whatever was written inside, I couldn't unread it. Finally, I slid my thumb under the flap and ripped it open. My eyes scanned the first page, searching for the line that mattered. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Mine. The baby was mine. I leaned back in the seat, staring at the paper, waiting for relief to come. But it didn't. Instead, a cold wave of something else washed over me, something darker. Because now there was no one else to blame it on. No easy out. No story I could tell myself about walking away clean. This child was mine. And I still didn't know if I could love it. The house was quiet when I walked in. Anna was sitting on the couch, holding her belly, the boys playing nearby unaware of the storm that had just passed between their parents. I folded the paper carefully and set it on the kitchen counter. "I got the results," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. She looked up, eyes wide but hopeful. "It's mine," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know." We sat in silence for a long moment, two people trapped between what was and what might be. "I don't know how to be with you right now," I admitted. "Or with this, baby. Or even with myself." Anna reached out, taking my hand gently. "Me neither. I want to be better," I said, "for the boys. For all of us. But I can't promise I won't be angry. Or scared." She squeezed my hand. "Neither can I. But I want to try." And in that fragile space, between pain and hope, I realized something. Love isn't always enough to fix everything. But maybe, just maybe, it's enough to start.